Prowadzone przez australijski rząd dochodzenie w sprawie wykorzystywania seksualnego dzieci ujawniło, że chrześcijański zbór Świadków Jehowy nie zgłosił policji ponad 1500 przypadków molestowania nieletnich. Dochodzenie prowadzi Australijska Królewska Komisja do spraw wykorzystywania seksualnego dzieci, która rozpoczęła pracę w 2013 roku w związku z doniesieniami o molestowaniu dzieci w Kościele katolickim. W czasie rozprawy członek komisji Angus Stewart określił chrześcijański zbór Świadków Jehowy jako zaściankową sektę powstrzymującą się od informowania policji o przypadkach nadużyć seksualnych. Powiedział, że przed Komisją Królewską zostaną przedstawione dowody na to, że od 1950 roku żaden z domniemanych przypadków wykorzystywania seksualnego dzieci przez Świadków Jehowy nie został zgłoszony władzom świeckim. Max Horley, starszy świadek Jehowy, wyjaśnił Królewskiej Komisji, dlaczego sprawy nie były zgłaszane. Powiedział, że członkowie zboru nie chcieli, by ich żony wiedziały, jakimi sprawami się zajmują, a także by inni wierni nie dotarli do takich informacji. Sędzia Peter McClellan zapytał Horleya, czy dzisiaj, gdyby ktoś przyszedł z informacją o poważnych zarzutach dotyczących przemocy na tle seksualnym, również zniszczyłby wszystkie notatki. Max Horley odpowiedział, że tak, ponieważ taka jest ich praktyka.
An inquiry underway in Sydney, Australia has uncovered disturbing information about child abuse within the Jehovah's Witnesses. Church representatives revealed that more than 1,000 members have been identified as child sexual abusers since 1950. The Commission learned that of those hundreds of cases, none was reported to police. An elder testified that its church practiced not to report sexual abuse, but rather to adopt a scriptural response to allegations. Emma Hannigan with Australia's SBS has been following the hearing. She joins us now live from Sydney. So, Emma, this is a wide-ranging royal commission. It started with allegations of child sexual abuse, into the Catholic Church, and now it's investigating the JWs, Jehovah's Witnesses. The evidence so far has been particularly damning.
It certainly has, Joan. I mean, the Royal Commission heard that, as you said, 1950, 1,006 alleged abusers have been identified to the Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, that was 1,006 people, not 1,006 cases, so we don't know how many cases were, but none of these were reported to authorities. Instead, what the Church would do is they would investigate the claims themselves. This often involved bringing the abuser and their victims together to discuss their claims of abuse.
A victim, identified only as BCB, was groomed and sexually abused by Bill Neal, a respected elder, from the age of 15. When the abuse finally emerged, she was summoned to a meeting of elder men that included her abuser. Bill Neal, who's now dead, admitted the abuse.
I found the experience of reporting my abuse to a room full of men, including the man who had abused me, very distressing.
She was also asked not to discuss the abuse with anyone else out of respect for her abuser and his family.
Thinking back, I now see that I was being asked to respect the man who had done those things to me, but nobody was offering me any respect or proper support.
The Royal Commission heard that of the 1,006 alleged abusers identified to the Jehovah's Witnesses since 1950, not one single person had been reported to police. This evidence was borne out by the testimony of one of the church elders, who himself had investigated a case of abuse.
And what about telling other authorities? Are you aware of your obligations if someone tells you of a serious allegation of sexual assault?
Well, we don't report it to the police. I think we encourage them to do that, but we give them the assistance to do that if they need that.
Church elders could now face criminal charges for concealing the abuse. The Commission also heard that the Church only believed victims if the alleged abuser confessed or there were two witnesses.
The requirement that there be two or more witnesses has prevented at least 125 allegations of child sexual abuse from proceeding to a judicial committee.
The hearing into the Jehovah's Witnesses is expected to continue for 2 weeks.
The Commission heard from another elder today who also investigated BCB's case. It was told that when he was informed the woman was considering bringing her story to the Royal Commission, he asked what that would accomplish other than dragging Jehovah's name through the mud. Now, he has admitted that this wasn't perhaps the most sympathetic approach to take.
And also today, the Commission has been dealing with the actual response by church elders when young women allege that they were sexually abused by members of the church.
Well, church elder today, Joe Bellows, said that the church recommends a biblical response to the trauma caused by sexual abuse. The Commission heard from 2 abuse survivors who felt so unsupported by the church that they had both attempted suicide. Now, they say that they've never been offered any compensation, they were never offered any counselling, and the church themselves has said that perhaps this is something that they need to consider. But they certainly aren't jumping to commit to anything at the moment.
Investigation into child sexual abuse among Jehovah's Witnesses and accusations that religious leaders led a cover-up within some of the group's 14,000 U.S. congregations. Our colleagues from the Center for Investigative Reporting obtained confidential memos shedding new light on the revelations. Special correspondent Trey Bundy has the story from Reveal, a new website, radio show, and podcast run by the center.
Jehovah's Witnesses in California, new members are taking the plunge.
You said yes.
They're joining more than 8 million members worldwide. Believers are taught to renounce secular society because it's controlled by Satan, and not to socialize too much with outsiders. But charges of sexual abuse have brought this insular community under greater scrutiny. And now, in this San Francisco courtroom, the first child abuse case against the Jehovah's Witnesses to go to trial is underway.
The next matter on the calendar.
Candace Conti is suing the organization for failing to protect her from a known child abuser when she was 9 years old.
If I were to sum up our goals of this case, it was to attack the policies and procedures that were in place that let a serial molester continue to molest children.
Conti's lawyer says instructions from Jehovah's Witness leaders have enabled child molesters.
The instructions were you keep these pedophiles secret.
The case hinges on letters from Jehovah's Witness leaders to the heads of local congregations. For almost 20 years, they've ordered them to send reports like this one for every known child abuser, to hide these cases from their congregations, and not to cooperate with law enforcement or the courts unless instructed to. They've refused judges' orders to turn over these abuse reports, so no one knows how many cases like Conti's are out there.
Jehovah's Witnesses abhor child abuse of any form.
The Jehovah's Witnesses insist that they comply with the law, and their lawyers argue that the First Amendment gives them the right to set child abuse policies as they see fit.
Religious beliefs and standards of Jehovah's Witnesses were at play in this case from start to finish.
The religious beliefs come from the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society in Brooklyn, which has often used the First Amendment to defend its policies of separation. In 1943, it even won a Supreme Court case, arguing that school children should not be forced to pledge allegiance to the flag.
May it please the court, James McCabe on behalf of the North Fremont
Watchtower lawyers, who refuse to speak with us, are again claiming a First Amendment defense to keep child abuse in its congregations secret.
And the elders are counseled in that letter to give special heed to the counsel to not reveal the confidential talk of another, quoting from the Bible book of Proverbs, chapter 25, verse 9.
Candace Conti was part of a Jehovah's Witness congregation in Fremont, California. She was often grouped with adults to go knocking on doors, including this man, Jonathan Kendrick.
He was very dominating, very domineering, he commanded a presence.
She says Kendrick would take advantage of their time door knocking to find ways to be alone with her.
Jonathan Kendrick molested me as a child. I really kind of pushed everything down and tried not to think about it as much as I could.
What no one in Conti's family knew was that Jonathan Kendrick had admitted to molesting another child a year earlier.
Regarding possible sexual abuse.
Michael Clark, an elder in the congregation, was asked about it in this deposition.
Do you recall becoming aware of a report of sexual abuse of a child by Jonathan Kendrick?
Yes.
When did you first become aware of such a report?
He had called us to his home to discuss or to confess to an incident with his stepdaughter.
Clark never called the police. He followed Watchtower protocol. He wrote to New York headquarters asking how to deal with Kendrick's confession. They told him not to investigate the matter further. Instead, they said, provide him with strong scriptural counsel to avoid a repetition of such a serious offense.
We don't make that public to the congregation that's confidential.
The elders did not warn other members that one of their own was a child abuser.
And that's the policy and the practice of Jehovah's Witnesses that you learned as an elder, correct?
Yes.
Clark says the elders told Kendrick not to be alone with children, but he was still allowed to join in congregation activities that included minors. A year later, one of those minors was Candace Conti.
And I don't think it ever left. I know it never left me. You know, it's always there. And it was just probably one of those days that, you know, I just felt it.
Conti kept quiet about the abuse until years later when she discovered on a sex offender registry that he had gone on to molest another young girl. She decided to sue the Watchtower.
I think after I had found that out, I had this sense of guilt. You know, what if I did something? What if I hadn't been such a coward? What if I had done something to maybe protect this other child, you know? I knew what he was capable of, but I didn't do anything, you know? And then now look what happened.
I drove to Oakley, California, where Kendrick had moved when he left Conti's congregation. I met the girl Conti had found. She agreed to talk to us if we didn't show her face.
When I was a little girl, like probably about 6 or 7, Jonathan Kendrick had abused me.
She blames the Watchtower's secrecy for enabling Kendrick to marry into her family and target her. The family sued the Jehovah's Witnesses.
They knew that he had a past, and they kept it from us.
When Kendrick moved to the Oakley congregation, no one was told he was a child molester. Not even Roger Bentley, who served as an elder there for 30 years. He reviewed this letter of introduction from Kendrick's old congregation.
There's no indication at all that he's guilty of child abuse.
So no mention of child abuse, but any mention of children?
Well, if you read it, it very specifically says, that's not a child abuser. That's a recommendation. That's a very specific recommendation. Oh, relax, he's good with kids.
I've spent months trying to interview Watchtower leaders, but they wouldn't talk to me. Instead, they sent a statement saying they comply with reporting laws, they do not shield abusers from law enforcement, and are committed to preventing child abuse. And in one of the dozen lawsuits I've been following, Watchtower supervisor Richard Ash was asked if the organization has a responsibility to protect children from abuse.
But within the congregation, ours is a spiritual protection. When we're talking about physical protection, that's up to the secular authorities to provide. And so
he was asked about the Watchtower's Bible-based directives to keep child abuse cases confidential.
It states in paragraph 3, there is a time to keep quiet when your words should prove to be few. Do you see that?
Yes,
sir. You know, Mr. Joe,
object to that. It's a violation of the First Amendment, freedom of religion, freedom of association.
The courts continue to grapple with the question, should freedom of religion outweigh the responsibility to protect children? In Candace Conti's case, the jury overrode the First Amendment claims and decided the Watchtower and the North Fremont congregation were negligent and did not adequately protect her from abuse. Kendrick maintains he never molested her. Pending appeal, she was awarded more than $15 million in compensation and damages. It's the first time a jury has ordered the Watchtower to pay for its child abuse policies. But for Kendrick's other victim, her case against the Watchtower was thrown out. Even though Kendrick confessed to the abuse in this deposition and served about 8 months in jail, the judge affirmed that the Watchtower's policies were protected by the First Amendment. It was not liable because the abuse occurred at home and not in the course of religious activity. The Watchtower had no obligation to warn the family about Kendrick's past. Kendrick is now free and still an active member of the Oakley congregation.
The fact that Jonathan Kendrick is still a member of good standings is absolutely ridiculous. It's scary. I mean, the fact that he still has access to children, and really, my parents didn't have the power to know that Jonathan Kendrick was a child abuser. Let's give the parents the power to be able to protect their children. And that's what these organizations are hiding.
Despite the huge verdict against the Watchtower, the organization is sticking to its policies. In fact, it just released another confidential memo reminding elders to keep quiet about child abuse. I'm Trey Bundy from Reveal for the NewsHour.
Do 2008 roku byłem Świadkiem Jehowy. Wcześniej byłem starszym i między innymi brałem udział w komitetach sądowniczych, w których zajmowaliśmy się problemem pedofilii. W związku z tym, że sam jako dziecko byłem ofiarą wykorzystania seksualnego od 4 do 17 roku życia, byłem wrażliwy na tego typu historie. Organizacja w swoich działaniach opiera się na prawie jeszcze mojżeszowym, które wymaga od ofiary, żeby udowodniła, że została skrzywdzona, przedstawiając przynajmniej 2 lub 3 świadków. Prawie zawsze pedofil jest kimś bliskim dla swojej ofiary, najczęściej członkiem rodziny, kimś zaufanym, bliskim. Dlatego trudno jest pozyskać świadków takiego przestępstwa. Bardzo często jest to niemożliwe, ponieważ jest to słowo przeciwko słowu, ofiary przeciwko swojemu oprawcy. W sytuacji, gdy oprawca nie przyznaje się do popełnionego czynu, do przestępstwa, sprawę się po prostu umarza. Nie podejmuje się żadnych kroków. Powoduje to, że groźny dla społeczeństwa pedofil może dalej grasować w społeczności Świadków Jehowy, ale również w lokalnej społeczności, tam gdzie mieszka. Świadkowie Jehowy jakby stosują tutaj podwójne standardy. Gdyby Świadek Jehowy zamordował drugiego Świadka Jehowy lub innego człowieka, nikt nie oczekiwałby, że przyszedłby najpierw do starszych, tylko każdy zdecydowałby się na przykład zadzwonić na policję. Natomiast gdy dochodzi do pedofilii, Świadkowie Jehowy nadają sobie prawo decydowania o tym, czy w ogóle takie zdarzenie powinno wyjść na światło dzienne.
Od 1950 roku Zarząd Organizacji Świadków Jehowy zgromadził około 5000 dokumentów szczegółowo opisujących wykorzystywanie seksualne dzieci. 1006 pedofilów wykorzystywało seksualnie ponad 1800 ofiar. 170 z nich to były dzieci w wieku do 5 lat. W 276 przypadkach pedofil okazywał skruchę i wracał do zboru. To są dane z Australii, ale problem ukrywania przypadków pedofilii dotyczy również Polski i zborów w Polsce. W tajnym liście z ciała kierowniczego, czyli Zarządu Organizacji Świadków Jehowy do starszych zboru na całym świecie zostało napisane, aby w przypadku sprawy dotyczącej wykorzystywania seksualnego dzieci powiadomić dział prawny organizacji znajdujący się w biurze oddziału, a nie policję czy prokuraturę.
Więc jeśli uznacie, że dana osoba może ponownie się tego dopuścić, taka osoba nie jest napominana i zostaje wykluczona. Tak. Taka osoba może nadal uczęszczać na zebrania, ale są na nią nakładane ograniczenia. Tak, wiele ograniczeń. I osoby wewnątrz zboru nie mogą utrzymywać z nią kontaktów towarzyskich ani duchowych. Ale taka osoba nadal funkcjonuje w społeczeństwie i może utrzymywać kontakty z osobami spoza zboru. Tak. Nie bierzecie tego pod uwagę, że taka osoba, która może się tego dopuścić ponownie, jest zagrożeniem dla ludzi spoza zboru? Gdyby chodziło o bliskiego przyjaciela spoza zboru, to bym mu o tym powiedział. Skąd wiedziałbyś, że to jest bliski przyjaciel i jest poza zborem? Miałem na myśli mojego bliskiego przyjaciela. Twojego? Tak, jeżeli miałbym z nim kontakty. W takim razie co z ludźmi, którzy nie są twoimi bliskimi przyjaciółmi? To znaczy innymi ludźmi spoza zboru. Nie podejmujecie żadnych kroków, aby ochronić ich przed osobą, którą uznaliście za potencjalnie zdolną do popełnienia tego czynu ponownie? Nie podejmujecie, prawda? Przede wszystkim interesuje was to, co się dzieje w zborze, czy tak? Interesuje nas to, co się dzieje w zborze. Jesteśmy pasterzami zboru. Nie jesteście pasterzami dla tych, którzy nie są w zborze? To dość ogólnikowe stwierdzenie. Mogę je zawęzić. Tak, proszę. Gdy podejmujecie decyzję, by kogoś wykluczyć lub nie, Nie bierzecie pod uwagę dobra dzieci nie będących częścią zboru? Bierzemy to pod uwagę, ale jak mielibyśmy otoczyć ochroną każde dziecko w Australii? Przecież w waszej mocy leży złożenie zawiadomienia o tej osobie do odpowiednich władz. I tak robimy w pewnych przypadkach. Ale w większości wypadków tak nie robicie, prawda? Nie. Robicie tak tylko wtedy, gdy wymaga od was tego prawo. Tak, to prawda.
Yes, so the truth, right? The organization is the one that has the truth, right? So you're raised in the truth. I left the truth.
There was a lot of good in being raised a Jehovah's Witness, and then I also feel there's a lot of unhealthy type of education.
We're taught there is nothing outside of the witness organization.
They talk about happiness and joy, and they take that away from people.
I don't think they question the doctrines that are being given to them. They become comfortable with it.
Growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, college was not an option.
Anytime you take away a child's freedom of choice, you've taken away that child's spirit.
Church is business, okay? Real estate, money, equipment.
There is a fear-mongering that is instilled, and I think they do it as early as you can understand it. If you do not serve Jehovah, you will die. Do you know anybody that does not serve Jehovah? Well, let them know they will die.
So when you're told that God is casting you out of his organization and no one will talk to you, it was devastating, and it was self-inflicted, one of the worst times in my life.
They need to go through what they are expecting other people to go through.
It can't all be that great and still be this bad.
You do exactly what we tell you to do, and we'll love you. And if you don't, we will leave you.
I don't think it's healthy for people to feel guilty about living life to its fullest.
Parental relationship is non-existent, and a picture has been painted of me that I'm not a good father.
Any religion that ostracizes family for faith is bad.